Okay, this video is a teardown and belt replacement for a AIWA compact disc stereo system. This one is the NSX-V52. This is actually the front of the unit, face down, so you can't see the model name marking. Okay, now this is over 20 years old. I got it on my birthday about 20 years ago, or it could have been Christmas. And after a number of years, it just stopped working. And I seem to remember that it was the CD changer that stopped working, but I finally took it off out of the storage room with the intention of getting it working again. And the first thing I noticed was that the tape player was not working. And so I did expect that the belts might need to be changed. So I did start tearing it down. Now, I couldn't find the teardown procedure, so I'm just going to briefly go over that for you here, and I will try to show it on reassembly. The first piece I took off was this cabinet. It's the top and the two sides, okay? And the second piece that comes off easily is the back piece. Okay, these are just screwed on. And then possibly the third piece is the CD player that's up at the top. One little trick on the CD player coming off is this little lip on the tray, okay? It is clipped on, and so you can snap it off. I did see that on the internet. It does feel as though it's about to break, but it is designed to come off, without breaking. Okay, having done that, I still found that it was necessary to remove this board. This might be, I'm not sure exactly how these boards are called, but this board here, which was connected in through a connector here, which I could tell that was, probably going to come out without anything breaking. I should mention that I did have to remove one of these flex cables to take the CD player off, and disconnect another flex cable that was also related to the CD. No, maybe not the CD, but possibly to a different component. But anyway, these are relatively easy. Oh yeah, this one does go to the CD. I labeled it. They're relatively easy to put back because normally there's only one that has a certain length, and you can tell pretty much where it's going to go. Yes, the reason is that this block here was, blocks access to this tape drive. To get access to the tape drive, so I had to take this side piece off, and then the next piece I took off is the bottom of it. So everything's off here now, and it did come off not too terribly bad because I will be able to put everything back on, without soldering anything. I did, refrain from disconnecting certain connectors because they didn't look like quick disconnects. So in cases like that, I just use some masking tape and I try to position the various components in such a way that the cabling is not stressed and I still have access to it. That's the best possible case. And then hopefully I will be able to reassemble this. Now, I was able to get some replacement bands on Amazon. I got a pack of 50 for, I think it was only maybe $8. And I did find two that I thought were reasonably good matches. It turned out that there were 3 bands here, and the 2 that I had to replace was this one and this one, okay? I didn't have to replace this really long one. I'm lucky because I don't have a replacement for that. The bag didn't have one that would be that long. And I didn't have to go about trying to find one because it seems okay now. It could easily also fail. But because I now know how to take this apart, I'm not going to stress out over replacing this and keeping this in this state until I get a replacement when it seems to be working okay. These other bands were completely either broken in one case or stretched so much that they were off the pulley or the pulley was completely slipping. Okay, so they absolutely had to be replaced. I actually first replaced them with rubber bands. I found some rubber bands that were the right size. I actually cut the rubber bands in half widthwise to match the width. And you can see here I kind of matched up the broken one. So this was one of the broken ones. It was stretched quite a bit before it snapped. So it was hard actually to get a gauge of its original length because it was stretched. And there was another one that was stretched. So I replaced this one with that, and I felt it seemed to be okay. I replaced this one with something about this length, and that seemed to be okay now. I couldn't get a spec. I couldn't find a spec sheet that said what the actual length should have been. So I could have actually tried measuring these to put one of the correct length. I just had to eyeball it, and they seem okay because they seem to tolerate, there's a certain amount of stretch in the band. It seems to tolerate that. So, you know, we'll just see what happens. Okay, I'm going to try to hit pause here, and on reassembly, I'll try to come back in and show you some of the steps. But if the pause doesn't work, sometimes it doesn't, then that'll be the end of it. Or I might put on a part 2. Okay. Okay, first step, I connected the sideboard. And you can see the connector there. You can tell when it's fully seated. And in this case, there was also one screw that held this on. And you can see this was blocking the tape drive. I was actually able to replace one of these with much less disassembly, but I subsequently realized that the other one was also failed, and there's no way. I did try briefly to change this using these little picks, and it just seemed conceivably possible, maybe, to change one of these with these picks without disassembly, but I only spent a few minutes on it. I realized that that's going to be extremely frustrating, and I did find online a teardown of a similar unit. It was an AIWA. It was a compact stereo. The boards were configured slightly differently, but it was the same general scheme, and he did end up with the front all by itself, with all the other sides of the cube removed, and he had access. So that was my guide. I will say that for technique here, I have been trying to put the screws into different little bins. This is not perfect by any means. I have like 4 of them and that I've used at different stages, but I could still end up getting it screwed up. I didn't take pictures like I could have. Some of the screws do have a countersink, I guess you might call it, that beveled edge, and some of them are flathead. This particular one, I'm pretty 100% sure because this was you can tell that it needed a countersink. So I think I'm going to be okay on that, but I've done that in the past and ended up, having 2 screws. One's just slightly longer than the other one, and they'll kind of fit either way, and it's a little frustrating not to be sure that I didn't actually get it back together the right way, because you never know exactly how sensitive something's going to be. Now, as I was taking this apart, I did notice there was this small black piece that did show up on the table. It might have come from the inside, and I might have knocked it off, possibly snapped it off of something. I didn't see any place where it went, but I'm just going to keep my eyes open if I notice something. I don't think it's going to be important because there are a lot of little black posts that are sometimes just in alignment on assembly. It does not look functional, but we'll find out. So I'll hit pause again and try to go for the next step. Okay, now I've put the bottom on. The bottom had 2 screws, one here and one exactly on the opposite side, and they were exactly the same type of screw as that I previously put on. Then there was a screw there and another screw in a somewhat harder location to put in right there. And then there was a screw here and a screw there. Okay, these screws were not the same as that screw. They had different threads. I did have to look at them carefully. Try them. You can tell when one of them is going in and when it's not going in. And I could also notice there were two screw holes down there, but only one of them was the right one. Now, sometimes you can tell where a screw has been because there's a little round circle on the metal where the screw was attached, and there was on one of those, but not on the other. So after fidgeting with it a little bit, I was able to get that to go in, and now this particular tray is empty. So as I took off each particular piece, I put the screws for that piece into a particular tray. That's a certain level of organization. So far, it seems okay. So I'll see if I can get to the next step. Okay, I got the back on. I had two trays of screws that looked really similar. One had 8, one had 7. One was a little bit longer. And I got them mixed up for a little bit, but then I realized that there were 8 screws to hold on the back. And one little plastic pin that was a giveaway. Plastic pin holds that cable against the back with a little fastener. Okay, so all these screws went in fine. And now on to the next step. Okay, I put in the CD player. I only had 2 screws for that one here and one on the opposite side. In putting it in, I noticed I did have to take the back panel off because of when I disassembled it. I did not put it in the same order. I would have taken off the back panel first before taking off the CD player. And so anyway, I'm going to now just put these screws back on. So it didn't look like a big deal. Okay, so I will go to the next step. Okay, another slight digression. I had to fasten these ribbon cables. There's a short one there, and then there was the longer one that goes to the CD player. Those are the 2 ribbon cables I took off. Now, the CD player should be not reassembled in the cabinet because it would be very hard to make this connection. So it's when it's out, you want to reconnect the ribbon cable so you have flexibility, then put it back in. So I'm recovering from that. Now I have the CD player back in with the ribbon cable, and I will now reattach the back and get to the next step. Okay, I put the back on after attaching the cables to the CD player, and now I've hooked up the power. I have noticed I am missing 3 screws. Not terribly unusual. I don't actually know where they are right now. Hopefully they'll show up. Right now it's being held together with less than 3 screws without them. When I first had a problem, and I could tell the belts were broken even before opening the cabinet because door number 1 here was jammed. It would not stay, I couldn't get it open. And when I went online, people said that was because the belt was broken, because there's a component that interferes with the locking mechanism when the belt gets broken. And so I opened the cabinet, and sure enough, the belts were broken. Let's put it to tape. Let's see if we can get anything going here. I have the sides off so that I could still see the mechanism. The belts seem okay, but whether or not it will play properly is another question. So right now, for example, I notice the door is jammed again. So there is a problem with the mechanism, even though the belts appear okay. So there could be more going on here. I'll just take another pause. Okay, I was able to get the cassette out, but only by a lot of random trial and error, primarily advancing the pulleys by hand. I noticed that the belts seem to be working fine. Both of the pulleys move. The locking mechanism, that same object that is related to the drive mechanism, seems to get the door jammed occasionally. I was able to get it to run on side one, but I think there is still a problem. So in the time being, I think I haven't seen a problem on deck 2, which apparently will also do playback. So yes, so I'm just going to have to continue to play with this. The belts seem okay. It does still seem to have other issues, and I'll just have to debug those totally separately. So that's it for the teardown. I'm not going to put the lip on here just yet because I believe I still have an issue now, even with the CD player, but this was all about just changing the tape belts. There is a belt in the CD player, but it actually seems fine, and there could be a totally different issue with that. And the remaining side cabinet part, I'm not going to bother to put that on right now because I'm still going to be debugging it, but that's the easiest of the assembly procedure. Okay, so that's it for this this video. Okay, thanks.